Okay, so this is Kim, part of the iMoot team, and on behalf of the iMoot team, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and also thank you, Joseph, for the presentation you're about to do. So, I looks like you're going to be talking about guidelines for building a course in a closed environment. So that sounds pretty interesting. So, uh, we welcome you again, and here you go.
Okay, thanks, Kim, for the introduction. And like Kim mentioned, my name is Joe Broeker, and I work as a LMS administrator and a institute located in the Gulf region in the Middle East. Okay, are we still here? Just lost my screen.
Yep,
Okay,
it's all good here.
great, super. All right, to jump right in here, an introduction. So briefly, a bit of a negative connotation here, but it's actually we have no access to the internet at our school. It's closed. Everything's on the internet, and there's some positives with this situation, but of course some negative aspects as well. But what I'll briefly be doing is outlining the starting point at our institute and the strategy and implementation of our LMS and courses and how we got more involvement from the teachers and students and showing specific examples of the materials that have been developed in activities. And all the examples I'll be using are from teachers and showing some of the activities they've used. So that's a basic rundown. I'm going to jump into a background now of the Institute. There's a lot of words here. Sorry about that. But as I mentioned, it's a technical institute. Our students are technicians, are going to be technicians. And our institute's about 1,000 students in attendance. Currently, we have 134 active online courses, 350 classes that were scheduled this term. Also, our students receive no unique system accounts to log into the computers. We have generic student accounts created by our IT department. Also, no personal devices are allowed. The student accounts are blocked from, as I mentioned, from accessing any internet sites. And the internet system is only accessible from the campus. The one thing they do have, of course, is a unique LMS account through Moodle. And through this account is how they access daily activities. So that's the basic rundown of the Institute. Give you a little background. Now on to the starting point of where our LMS was at, I'd say about 5 years ago. We had, of course, limited student access. Our systems limited software, mostly just your basic Microsoft package for teachers and some Adobe products. We had limited material and activities that were located on the LMS. Essentially, what teachers were using the LMS for were just storing midterm grades and final term grades. So they would more or less keep their grades on spreadsheets on their desktop or in a shared folder. And when administration would put pressure on them, they'd finally get their grades on the system at the end of the term. So it would show for the term we'd have about 300,000 hits for the total term. So not a lot of use. And I put the average age of our instructor is about 55, and just shows that we have an aging population. Not to say that they were totally against any new technology, but they were, as I mentioned, more set in their ways of using traditional methods, just paper and spreadsheets. And I put at the very bottom that we did have uh, newer teachers coming in who were excited with the new apps, of course, and Web 2.0 platforms, but we had to steer them in a correct, in a positive direction. So it was a bit challenging in that aspect. Okay, so strategy and implementation. Uh, First was putting an emphasis on organization and navigation and showing instructors how they could, of course, organize their material better through an LMS as opposed to the standard shared folder route. Also, classrooms, yeah. So they mostly instructors would just put their lesson material on a thumb drive, go to the classroom, and then plug it into the computer. They could no longer do that, and they found that going through the normal route of mapping the drive and going through the shared folder system on every computer they had to go to was cumbersome. So they started drifting towards the LMS. We also started training, but we started very simple with the activities. We didn't want to overcomplicate it and introduce it step by step. The other point was I showed a picture there of we have a lot of paperwork, or did, at the school, and we show how different activities and portfolios could be put online, and this perked interest. Also, of course, emphasizing the time savings through testing online. And I'll get into that later. And then finally was for those teachers that were more familiar with e-learning, we created more advanced training sessions to have further development. Okay, so this is just a current rundown of what's on our LMS. We're now at about 5,000 plus assignments, 4,000 folders, likewise with files, 3,000 quizzes. This seems like a lot of material for 134 courses, but we do, we have several other courses that are inactive. This is over a period of 5 years. Also, the lesson modules been used a lot, Lightbox galleries, and we have surveys that are offered at the end of the course to evaluate. And we do have limited SCORM objects that myself and a few others have created using mostly Articulate. All right, so where's that all led us? Now, this is just a snapshot I took of our system. We're currently averaging about 200,000 hits per week. So more or less doing what we did a few years ago for the whole term in a week. And it's interesting here just to show the graph. I thought it was where you can see the weekends. That's where there's actually no access to the LMS. So you can see that through the week. Okay, now let's get on to the actual activities, and we're going to start off with the course material. And like I said, this is basic activities and material that I'm going through. The first thing starting off is online manuals that we now have PDFs on all our courses. These are mostly for projection in the classroom by teachers. They can also print off from there. Students do have group iPad sets that they can download the PDF onto their iPad, but mostly used by teachers in the classroom. Also, as I mentioned, we have thousands of images that are uploaded to the LMS, mostly depicting the different types of tools and hardware that the technicians need to be familiar with. And we have the Lightbox plugin that we use that helps organize the images. Below that are the presentations. That's probably our weakest point of the system, of course, because it's through it's a closed system. Mostly it's just through PowerPoints that are then downloaded onto desktops from the LMS. But there's several other different activities that we've used to actually use presentations. One was the Lightbox. We've actually just uploading slides and then going through the Lightbox activity. Okay, so now onto the coursework. I'm showing you one of the first activities that we used, and as I mentioned, we have several workbooks that students were required to complete, and those were mostly made up of short answer questions. So what we had instructors do, we directed them just to the quiz assignment and choosing an essay question, and then simply enabling the response template. And that way they could put several questions in the on one essay question instead of doing across several essay questions. That way they could simply check if it had been completed and mark as such complete or incomplete. Other teachers had tried the inline assignment, but our students are fairly limited with their typing skills, so they found it was difficult for them to answer several questions in the in the essay area. So that's our first activity that we started. The second part was with portfolios and uploading evidence. So here's a picture of one of our students, excuse me, in front of we call those workbenches. And after a student finishes the project, he'll stand in front of it, take a picture, and they'll upload it directly to the LMS as an upload assignment. Next to him, if you can see it, it's a drawing that they're required to do several electrical drawings, and that will be on paper, of course. They sign their name, take a picture of it, and also upload it to the LMS. The third part, observations. Most of our courses require teacher observations of students, and in the past, of course, those were done with this paper clipboard in front of the student at a workbench. The student would operate the system, and then the teacher would evaluate them, checking off on a clipboard. That worksheet or observation would then go in the student's portfolio, and then the teacher would later have to upload it to the LMS manually. So through a teacher iPad and the rubric enabled assignment, they can grade the student face to face, and obviously very popular with the teachers and simple to create as well. Now on to the automated quiz activities. There are a lot of tools and hardware that students need to be able to locate, as mentioned before. So teachers started creating simple multiple choice questions. Here's one, use it as an example. Also a diagram to the right with several drop-down menus. And then we introduced, here on the next slide, is a drag and drop marker type question. And we have an older version of Moodle, so this was uploaded as a plugin. And students like these. It's a little easier to locate the correct locations of definitions. Here's an example of another drag and drop, but with, if you can see that, several text boxes. They can get pretty complicated. And another drag and drop marker. But this is image upon image, so they look at, here's a simple diagram, but they'll take another symbol and have to drag it to its correct location. And here's a teacher actually created a motor that had several parts, and the student has to put it together. Okay, here's a numerical question. Excuse me. And students are required to work at a work. Yeah, okay. They're expected to sit at a workbench and then operate the system, and they'll take a reading from a valve or a temperature gauge, and then enter in that that numerical value directly into an iPad, into Moodle. Before, they would have a clipboard and a worksheet and fill out manually, and the teacher would have to then grade that another time. Now it can be marked directly through Moodle. So that's a simple numerical question. Here's another one, but using a close question type. A teacher designed this one, and this is where they're standing in front of in the workshop, and they have a tool or a piece of hardware, and they have to name the piece that they're looking at, its function, and they have several questions, drop-down menus. And instead of going through several slides, they can just answer all questions on one slide while they're viewing that object. It's the same thing, an embedded close, but more complex. And there's mixed questions here where there's numerical values or drop-down boxes that are used. So once again, instead of the student going through several different slides, he can only have one image that he looks at and answer, all done through Moodle instead of doing any manual grading by the teacher. Okay, and here it is. The last part after the coursework is our formal testing. And I'll briefly run through this. I've placed some of our more lengthy guidelines for testing on my website I've made on Moodle Cloud. The address is actually on the front page of the presentation as you come in, and there's a login ID, be student if you want to check it out. Excuse me. So currently we have over 10,000 online tests that were provided last year. All tests are secured with students with passwords, date and time, group overrides, and we also use the Safe Exam Browser plugin. This, of course, uses the same quiz activity as the other worksheets. So to also ensure that tests are secure from instructors, we've had to train testing coordinators on where to locate their questions, also showing them how to set local permissions on the tests so those editing teachers can't access the test. And also the last step was we installed the subcourse plugin. So those departments that had more concern over security, we would actually put tests on a separate course and then block other staff from viewing those, only the testing coordinator. And those are students that were allowed to take the test. And then we would simply pull in that test final grade into the course. Okay, I think that's the last slide there. So I went through a lot of information. If anybody has any questions over any of the past slides, the activities we've used, or maybe have a similar experience at your school.
Those were some really great questions, Joe. Can you share that link again? Was it on the front page of your presentation there?
Yeah, it was. I'm going to write it right now.
Okay, perfect.
Here in the text box.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, I think I got it right there.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. And the logon is B student. Yeah, that's great. The Moodle Cloud. How long has that been going now for?
Oh, Gareth, do you know? Maybe a year, 2 years?
Oh, good couple of years, I think. I'll see if I can go through correct something. I'll find out. Hang on.
Yeah, it's probably been 2 years, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, it looks great. I just got on it last week, obviously because we I couldn't show anything from our server.
Yes. So, what is the internet like there? Do you have lots of bandwidth and things like that?
Well, for teacher computers and myself, we can access the internet, but from student computers and iPads, it's strictly on the internet. So there's a big wall between that it's just a school policy. They're concerned with students accessing other sites, so they just block it off completely. Okay, 2015, 2 years. That's great.
Thank you, Gareth, for looking that up.
Okay, well, if there's no questions, thank you for letting me present. I guess we're going to do this one more time. And
Yeah, thank you for presenting, and thank you to all that attended as well. So I'm going to go ahead and, well, I guess what we got up next? We got what if software actually worked together with Chris Cormack. So that's what's coming up next. And but thank you again, Joseph. That was pretty neat. Pretty neat to see how you guys are doing that. So thank you for sharing.
you bet. There you go.